All right, we should be live. What's up, guys? Jason here from the Table Monkeys with none other than Toddzilla, Todd Hutchings, I don't know, so many nicknames, but just the master of side picture. Whose thing is on? Is that mine?
Countless feeds. Reggie amazed everyone by dodging that cork.
Sorry,
And
guys.
is now
So you?
Yeah, that was me. Sorry.
Okay.
Almost live. What's up, guys? Almost prepped. Jason here from the Table Monkeys with there we go. None other than Todd. All right. Sorry about all that. Had as I was saying before we came live, I had a few technical difficulties before we went live, so obviously I didn't get all my screens cleaned up before. But we're good. We're here. We're with Todd and Alex, and we're going to talk mainly about stats. Talk about TAWF. This is the TAWF Flamecast. So we're going to talk about TAWF, but also just anything arm wrestling related. And Todd, Uncle Todd, has been doing a lot of videos about stats recently, and I thought that was a good correlation with TAWF because of the point system, the way that we're going to be able to track stats over the course of a season. I think will really tie into the way that he was trying to analyze them in the previous videos. So. And also just a backstory, I guess, as we talked about a little earlier, is that there's an old ARM TV video. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find it again, but if you do some digging on ARM TV and Todd Hutchins, there was a clip of him talking about team arm wrestling and that being something he thought would make sense. He never thought about it further than that, but it was definitely something that sparked the idea in me a long time ago. And we talked about it when he first came here to have a double super match between Pork Chop, Curtis Cameron, and Brian DeSormo, bless his soul. It was a pretty cool situation, and we did a little no elimination tournament, which had the point system, so it was like the very beginning of the team stuff, and we talked about it then. He thought it was a good idea then, still tends to think it's a good idea, and that's the whole story. Everybody's caught up. Now I'll stop. We'll let
And that was how many years ago was that when Todd had that super match with Brian and Curtis?
At least 3. I want to say 4 though. It was like
I was thinking 4 because I think I just started dating Susie then. So I've been dating her for 4 years. So.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. Yeah, no, so 4 years ago, and like I said, I had never even done a team thing at that point. It was still just a concept at that time, and I had the point system kind of figured out, which that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today, because in doing your points, doing your stats videos, all you have is a win-loss, and like with a point system, you can start to establish things in points per poll, which starts to give you like a more accurate or a more divisible, like a more accurate number, I guess is the right way to say it, right? Like, especially over the course of a season. Sorry, anybody? Alex, what's your opinion on that? Do you want
to? Well, yeah, you're right. Like, obviously, there's gonna be more variance in the points when it's not just win loss, and it's like. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine. Sorry, I just wanted to set up so I can see the chat because I can't see it on this other screen here. So I just wanted to get it so that I can see it.
Yeah, like if it's a super match, right? If it's 3 flash pins, it's going to show the same number of wins and losses versus a battle, like a hook war that lasts a minute, 3 rounds. So if there's a way for the stats to show that, that's going to be more accurate representation of how the actual match happened, or how these two pullers compare.
Yeah, Todd, how are you accounting for fouls in your system? I can't remember how they tied in.
I keep track of how many times you win or lose on fouls.
Meaning you have a foul and you win or lose?
Yeah. So like if like for me, I collect a lot of fouls, so I lose a lot of matches on fouls.
Okay.
But somebody like Dave Chafee doesn't. He never fouls out. So if so if you have somebody who like never fouls out going up against somebody who fouls out all the time, there's a potential strategy there for the guy who doesn't foul to pressure his opponent into fouling out.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if there's a pattern there. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So then the way that would play out with the points, because the fouls in our system offset the points, right? So a win is 5 points, and then if I win but you have a foul, I get 6 points. If I win but I have a foul, then I get 4 points, right?
Okay.
So only the winner gets points. So that's another one, like I was saying, like if you were comparing two pullers after the course of a season, and one puller in a top roll scores 6 or 7 points a pull, it means that he's dominant, like he's a dominant top roller. But when he pulls in a hook, he's only getting like 0.2 or like a really low number. Then and you could even go the other way. You could even look at like if you're giving up points, if you put this guy in a hook, not only does he not win, but he actually has a negative average points.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then again, it's just another way of analyzing all the different aspects of it and keeping everything connected by having the point system, kind of like a batting average,
Exactly.
The way in baseball you'd be looking at the batting average versus left-handed batters, or I mean left-handed pitchers, or this pitch versus that pitch. You could start to do all those same breakdowns with all the same ways you were breaking it down with the different moves. And I like that idea of the like losing on fouls. Now with the MAC system, because we use the MAC table and the MAC rules, and the intention of the fouls in our league is for them to be, there's a lot less unintentional fouls. Like the fouls that happen are pretty much intentional, which is the purpose. Like we don't want fouls that neither opponent intended for them to happen.
But there's no advantage gained.
Yeah, exactly. And just with the divot, like because we're not counting the bobbles, and because of the border, you can get to the edge and basically be. So the way the border works on the table is that once you're on the border line, that's a warning, and it's a running warning. So the ref will warn you, get back on, and as long as you can touch the red, but you can't be on the red. So if I'm touching the red, that means I'm still on the black. But once I'm on the red and the line is thick enough that like you can be on it, and then if you're just past it, that's a stop foul right away. That's like you came off, okay, fine. But when you're on that edge, it's like it really gives a lot of play. Like it's almost impossible to accidentally like slide off the pad. So again, when you say you lose a lot of, or you end up gaining a lot of fouls, do you get them? Are you dividing too, if whether the fouls are in the setup or in the during the match?
At this point, I'm just counting all fouls.
Yeah, but for you personally, do you notice? Is there a difference? Do you go
my fouls tend to be lifting the elbow, like in the middle of the match. Okay. Yeah. Marcio's another guy who fouls a lot. He pops his elbow off a lot off go.
Yeah, and he comes off the front a lot, right? Like
yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. So that's one, again, like one of Ian's points about Mac is that we want like which again, it's growing and it's getting better. So the starts in the past maybe all haven't been perfect, but the idea is we want the refs to really control the start, like and then once the match is going, we want to let the pullers pull. And again, unless it's a like fuck that foul or no, I don't want this kind of dragging foul. Other than that, it should be like the guys can really stay in the match. They're not going to accidentally, cause a foul.
There's why the pads are bigger. There's the indents. There's the border. Everything is trying to make the match last as long as possible.
Yeah, and allow the fouls to be again like something that are used strategically. So we are okay with a professional foul in the sense that like shit, that's not a good position. I don't want to lose the match. I'll take a foul. But it sucks when like that Krdecha's foul against Devin at the end of that match, like that was
never been a foul.
Yeah, just such a bummer foul for everybody, right? Like regardless of whether it was a foul or not, it just sucks that one gets called like that because nobody.
How do you guys handle the foul off the back of the pad? Sometimes, like if you go off the back of your pad, sometimes I get fouled because I'm accused of like pushing you off the back of the pad.
So the way it works for in Mac, like on the Mac rules and for us is like if you're trying to come across at all, like you have to literally be like pushing your opponent off the back. But because there's no back, like the pad is the back of, it's kind of the same as WAL, like the pad is right at the edge. So if that opponent comes off that pad, like unless we're like both standing up again, unless you really push at me, it's pretty obvious that I'm pulling myself off the back of the pad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so far back. But if you're making a sideways movement pretty much at all, that's where you're initiating towards the pin and trying to gain an advantage. Unless you're really like forcing at the guy, you're not going to get called for that.
Yeah, because it was always
a question or.
Well, I always thought it was weird where if you come off the front of the pad, you get a foul.
Yeah.
Whether I pulled you off the front of the pad or not, you get a foul for coming off the front.
Yeah.
But if you go off the back, sometimes I get the foul. You know?
Yeah. So, yeah. You know what? I'd like to verify with Ian 100% because I feel like he even has another thing that he says about that because he's on the same school of thought as you on that he doesn't like the idea that like if I'm trying to gain advantage coming forward and you can't keep your elbow on the pad, it's why is that different? Like you said, if I'm trying to pull you back and I can't keep my elbow on the front of the, why is that any different? So
I feel like it's your responsibility to keep your elbow on the pad, whether it's the front or the back. Like
it's your responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you run out of bounds in any sport with a ball, it's your fault.
It's not the other guy's fault. Yeah.
You know?
That's a good point.
I started seeing, now that I'm watching a lot of matches very closely, I go, well, that's a weird foul to give somebody.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And especially when you compare it to other sports, like it's your job to stay in bounds 100%, right? That's a really good point. Yeah. I'm again, I know Ian has something, I can't remember what he says about it, but I know he has a way of explaining it that it warrants for that idea where it's up to you to stay on the pad, but I don't remember how he words it. But yeah, the other thing that is interesting about this and with your stats videos, I mean, it's the beginning of talking about it, but for all sports, like they're just a vehicle for people to talk about stats and then use those stats to then speculate about the next match and the next match. And forever, at least as long as I've known about arm wrestling, it's always arm wrestling math and how it doesn't make sense. And like that's the version of the stats and the speculating. And a lot of that is because there's no real like baseline recording of like, you know, over the last 10 years, this is what we've seen, or 5 years, this is what we've seen. Like you can do with like batting average in baseball again, where you can look at curveballs and sliders and how does it work against a left-hander. And then you have all these standardized things. You even talked about that for like the standardized athlete. Like we don't even have the standardized arm wrestling athlete yet. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's arm wrestling still, as old as it is, it's still pretty infantile as far as its development. You know?
Yeah. Until there's serious money in the sport, you won't see the top athletes coming to arm wrestling, and you won't actually see what the real archetype of an arm wrestler should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think arm wrestling is versatile enough a sport. It's kind of like UFC where you're going to have variance, especially with the weight classes. You know, there's going to be a time where there's a guy who's tall and lanky that owns a smaller weight class, and then there's a time where there's a guy who's really stocky and tight and he owns that class too. Like I think that I don't know that there is a perfect you know, prototype for an arm wrestler. I mean, there might be, but it's again, because it's such styles and everything. If you play to your advantages, it doesn't matter what they are. You can find a way to win.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then with the stats thing, Jason, is obviously it's about like hyping up the matches before, getting people to talk about it, but then with having the additional statistics involved with the point system and all the other aspects that we're including in TAWF, there's the whole betting component that's going to be improved in now, because now you can not only betting on the win loss, but you're also betting on the fouls, point spreads. Yeah. Obviously the spreads between the teams.
Yeah. One of the things, so we can
individual matches, etc.
Yeah, let's talk about the points a little bit, just because Todd said he has a base idea. But so one of the things that we've changed is there's a lot of ways to create point swings. So the first one is team captains. So each team picks a captain. So now the way it is, there's a manager. The manager is going to pick his team. The manager doesn't pull or arm wrestle. He does all the deciding and organizing for the team. And he also is the only one who's allowed to argue with the refs. So none of the athletes are allowed to argue with the refs. They can negotiate during the grip, like a little bit, but if they don't like a call, they can't dispute it with the ref. They can turn to their manager and say, fuck no, or whatever. And then the manager is the only one that can argue with the ref. So that's one thing I think will mitigate a lot of the bullshit, and also make it feel like real sports, where you'll have the baseball manager coming in going, instead of the athletes doing it. So sorry, is the managers pick that, is they pick a captain at the beginning of every game. The captain doesn't have to be the same every game. It can be different. The captain, whenever he wins a match, he gets an extra point. So if the win total for that match was 6, it's actually 7 for him, right? So that's the first way that you can augment points in the system. The second one is pulling up. So it's 5 points for a win, but if you pull up a weight class, you get a point extra for every weight class you go up. So if a lightweight wins a heavyweight match, he gets an extra 2 points for that win. And then the next one is a shutout. So because the way the game works is each round or each quarter is one match of each division. So lightweight left, lightweight right, middleweight left, middleweight right, heavyweight left, heavyweight right, superweight left, superweight right. And that's one round. And then we do that 4 times. So you get each match 4 times. So if a team shuts out a certain division, so lightweight left, you win all 4 matches. When you win the 4th match, you get an extra 5 points. And then the last thing is gamble wins or gambles. So each team has 2 gambles, meaning that at 2 matches at any point during the game, they can decide to gamble on that match and make the point score worth double. So if they win, they get double, but if they lose, the other team's going to get double for that. And each team has 2 of those. So it gives a lot of opportunities for these like point swings. And then, like Alex said, also different things to speculate and bet on. Like, oh, are they going to, you know what? I bet this game, I'm going to bet that Toronto's going to shut out Long Island's middleweight right-hand class. You know what I mean? So on and so forth. So again, the more things you can add into the sport to make it things that people can talk about, speculate about, look at stats for, it's just going to add more interest to people that don't arm wrestle, which is I think the key to getting it to that mainstream level.
So how many individual, like lightweight right hand, lightweight left hand, how many of those individual rounds have you run so far?
Sorry, how many rounds?
Yeah, it's like how many lightweight right-handed.
So the way
series of 4. What do you call a series of 4?
A series of 4 would be a game. So the game is 4 rounds. Yes.
How many games have you run so far total?
We've run 2 games total, but they've been under different formats that have now been modified to get to this format. So the first one was Alex, do you remember how many rounds it was? Did we do 8? Was it 8?
8 rounds.
8 rounds of 8 matches, because there was more weight classes. There was also women's. There were more athletes on the team, so it was longer. It ended up being too long for broadcast, and it was a little clunky. And then the next one we did was only 5 guys on a team, and it was supposed to be a lot quicker. But the teams weren't competitive, and it made the matches too stagnant because it was just a little too repetitive. So now we settled on it's 8 versus 8. So it's 2 people in each class per team. They have to have exactly 2. There's 4 matches in each one in the game. Athletes can pull up a class, not down a class, and then we go from there. So if the teams are competitive, after a couple pulls by the 2nd, 3rd round, it can start to get interesting. Who hasn't pulled a match yet can pull up a class and things like that. And because styles make matches. So as of yet, we don't have a lot of stats to look at. But after this game in October, and then once we're actually running a full season, where you're having 2 games a week, and each team is playing 7 games for the season and playing everybody once. At the end of that season, you'd have such a deep understanding of the stats and everything. It would be that's more what we're looking forward to. But as
I was just curious if you had a feel for how many shutouts you got, because I'm seeing a lot of shutouts in the East versus West and the King of the Table. Like 60 or 70% of them are shutouts.
Are like 3-0 matches.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So okay, now think about this, because so you pull, let's say you're the right hand middleweight specialist for your team. You pull that, you're going to pull the first middleweight right-handed match, whoever they put in there for that, and you're not worried. It's either a middleweight or a lightweight. You dust them the first round, and then it's not a super match. Like, it's one pull, and then everybody else pulls their one pull, and then you get your one pull in the next round. So you have there's lots of rest in between matches and lots of time to think about what to do differently. But the fatigue will play in, because also we're going to be encouraging people to use, there are fouls there. It's better to, even though you lose a point, if you get a foul, you're better to win the match. So if you think that there's something you can do, or any way you can take a restart and be more in the match, we're going to try to encourage that. But which will also make for longer matches as long as the single pulls go.
And you could be pulling a different person each round, right? It could pulling their one middleweight the first round, and then they'll throw in their second middleweight the second round. So you have to adjust your style based on that opponent. They could decide, hey, we're going to throw up our lightweight up against Todd and see if he can do anything. Or maybe you decide that you have a better chance against the heavyweight on their team instead of your heavyweight. So you go up and pull the heavyweight, you get in a war, and now you're struggling with the middleweights now in the next round. So a lot of things could change based on the strategy of your team and the other team.
Yeah. And each team has 2 substitutions too. So at a point during the game, they can switch a guy out right before the match. So then the other team has to think, oh, do I want to switch and everything, right? So it's just ways to instill the strategy, which also, because arm wrestling is so styles make matches, I'm use the point that I've heard you make all the time. It doesn't matter how hard you throw paper. If I throw scissor, if our strengths are the same, that's how that match is going to go,
Right.
And I use that all the time. And I think that that's one of the things that when the public really starts to understand that about arm wrestling, that's when it'll become really interesting. When they can watch it and see in the setup and be like, oh, he's going to go for a top roll, and then see the press coming and start to anticipate those things, that's when it's going to get really exciting. And because of the way that the strategy and the score is all set up, it really instigates it for a lot of teams to set up matches like that, where, like Alex said, now let's say you maybe don't pull the first right-handed middleweight match, and then by the second round, like Alex said, the heavyweight now is one match in, and now you can dust the heavyweight. So now you go up and pull the heavyweight, get the extra point, right? And now he's super tired and whatever. And all these different strategies can come in, and a lot of them will be forced based on styles, where it's I know that the side pressure is going to kill that guy's high game, or I know that the back pressure is going to kill that guy's side pressure, or whatever it is, right? And the more that can get explained, the more that public will understand it. And similar to understanding jiu-jitsu, once people were watching the UFC and cheered when somebody passed guard, that was when it started to change. It was
right.
Beginning, they didn't even know when somebody tapped out. They were like, "What? How did that end? What happened?" But now it's like somebody passes guard and the whole fucking place goes wild. It's like, oh, okay, that's that. They really understand the game now.
Exactly.
Any other questions about how the points work, or how we accumulate the stats, or anything like that?
No, I'm good. You haven't seen it yet. I got some inside baseball stuff to ask, but you haven't run that many yet, so you don't know. So
tell me, I love to speculate on it, because again, that's the whole point. So what do you mean?
Okay, it starts with the buckle. How important is the buckle?
Yeah.
But every time I get into an argument with somebody about the buckle, they can never explain to me how much of an advantage the actual side of the table's worth. So I was just wondering if you've seen a bias towards the table side. Take the straps out of it. Does a certain side of the table have a bias on it versus, because every time you get the buckle, you're on the same side of the table. You never ever get the buckle when you're facing the ref. You always get the buckle when you're facing away from the ref.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's an advantage to being able to look at the ref and also not having the buckle on your hand.
That's it. You can't separate the buckle from the table side, because every time you get the buckle, you're on the same side of the table. You know?
Yeah, I agree with that.
You can't test them independently. All you can do is you can look at table side in matches without straps.
Yeah.
And then you can look at tables. Then you can look at table side with the straps. So, I just
yeah, no,
wondered if
that
you
is
guys.
an interesting point, because I do think a lot of people, like your video with Devin, you point out how he loves having the buckle.
Yeah.
Like he kills it when he has the buckle, and that has something to do with the fact that he's got his shoulder to the ref. He's able to get away with other things while he's got the buckle, or it's how he gets it tightened or whatever it is. There's the advantage isn't the buckle. The advantage is where the ref is in that situation, I think. You know what I mean?
But Devin's the high priest in the church that the buckle matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's done more than anybody in this world to lay blame on the buckle.
Well, I do. Do you not? I know that you've made the argument you don't believe in the hustle strap. I do believe that the hustle strap makes a difference. Do you not agree with that?
I don't. I don't. That hustle strap, that fair strap, the fair strap, I flat don't see. I looked at, one was a Canadian tournament actually with a young Michael Gould in it, and the statistics for that tournament in Canada were just the same as the statistics like after we started going to the pulling the strap through. You know, it's just, what happens is too many people look at a tournament or a match and they make this broad prediction. I looked at 3 matches, therefore the buckle matters. While in the course of a year, there's probably 10,000 arm wrestling matches.
Yeah. Yeah, no. If we actually kept better stats on everything, we'd be able to really iron a lot of that stuff out. I feel that when you go through the middle, you do like when you don't go through the middle, the person with the buckle has like. I just find that it does give them a disadvantage to the wrist, but you're right. We don't have any way to actually judge it on the stats, and I think that the side of the ref, especially for experienced arm wrestlers, makes more of a difference than where the strap is, because if you've arm wrestled enough, whether you have the buckle or not, the little like tricks and how you want it to feel to get it to feel pretty good.
Exactly. Once that strap's tight, there's a lot of movement. So if there's any tension or bias in that strap, everything slips out when you're arguing and moving, and especially now that they're broadcasting and live streaming all these matches, the refs are really shy about enforcing very strict no moving rules, like they used to do in the Mazarenko tournaments or something.
Yeah.
So
you mean with the ref's grip, right?
The refs, anything. The Mazarenko tournaments, that elbow pad was as hard as this table, and they would call, if daylight could come through, man, they would call that foul.
Yeah.
And if they're putting that strap on and they shut your hand, if you moved even your shoulder, they would call you. Now they say no moving, and people are still moving, talking to the ref.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be a balance between the two, right? Because
I'm not saying which one's better. I'm just saying it's different.
It's definitely different. And I think where WL went too far one way, PAL went too far the other way.
Yeah.
And I think finding a middle ground is what's going to be best for the arm wrestlers and the viewers.
Yeah. Well, whatever you can sell is the best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And no matter how you watch it, how you break it down, selling matches that don't start or matches that start completely differently every single time, those things won't sell. you know, especially if one is like, it doesn't start because it's always getting fouled, or the other one is it's starting different and it's all just a bunch of like bullshit before it actually starts, you know. That's why, again, with Mac and with TAWF, even from the beginning, like Alex and I originally, we came up with like a handshake start where it was like, okay, every time you're supposed to do this kind of this silly handshake thing. But the intention was that the same way like a football game starts the same way, or a hockey puck gets dropped on the, like, you need the game to start, you need the thing to happen the same every time, so that when somebody's trying to fuck with it, or when there's something that happens that's not the way the rules play or the way that that start's supposed to be, it's easy for the audience to identify it, not just the refs, you know what I mean? But now it's so subjective, and it's so like how it's being called in that moment, that somebody who doesn't know is watching and is like, well, wait, why did that match start like that and that match started like this? I don't get the, like, it's too much different.
There's way too much speculation on like fouls and calls and ref decisions and arm wrestlers cheating. Like, that should not be what is being talked about.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it. Go ahead, Todd. Sorry.
Well, unless our business model's wrong, because if you watch a standard 3-0, 4-0 super match, the amount of actual arm wrestling, you know, 4 pins is what? 4 times 5 seconds after go. That's 20 seconds. That video is 35 minutes long. So, you know, we're selling a 35-minute video for 2 minutes worth of arm wrestling. We need to figure out how to sell the 35 minutes, not the 2 seconds.
Try showing that video to someone who doesn't watch arm wrestling.
I think you need to figure out how to cut out. I think you need to figure out how to cut out the 35 minutes. That's the
I agree. I mean,
I know you do. I know you
run
do.
3 matches in parallel or something.
Yeah, and I use that example all the time with the way it is now. Like if like Devin versus Gennady, one of the most exciting matches that I think we all love that match, but the video's, like you just said, the video's 38, almost 40 minutes long, and there's maybe 3 minutes of actual arm wrestling in the whole video. And if I'm going to show that at somebody at work, like the whole time, all I'm doing is this, like skipping through the video to try to find those shocking moments. And yeah, that's not, I don't think that is what, again, if we're talking about just people who are fanatics about arm wrestling and the arm wrestlers, sure, they'll watch that 35 minutes. But until we've got 10 people or 100 people that aren't that are just watching it for the fun of watching it because it's a fun sport to watch, and versus the one person that's watching it because of all those, they love the arm wrestling and the arm wrestlers, it won't be making the kind of money that it can sustain itself. You know what I mean? Which is the reason that the, you know, anyway.
I 100% agree. You know, the Brian Shaw Eddie Hall match that they just had, the recent one.
Yep.
I haven't watched it. You know, when it happened, I didn't stream it. I still haven't watched it because every time I go to click on it, it says 1 hour, 8 minutes. And I go, there's no effing way I am watching 2 amateur arm wrestlers go at it for
an hour long? Really? The video is that long?
I believe so.
I didn't realize that. When I watched it live, Todd, I thought, I was like this, because it is dramatic, and they get into it and they have some bullshit with they're fighting for position. It's actually kind of interesting. And like at the end of the match, Devin was like, that was one of the best matches I've ever watched, because it was a bit like, oh shit, it looks like Eddie's gonna win, and then you didn't know for a second. So it was exciting in the moment. And I thought, I was like, oh, these guys are like, they're top tier, the 2 most exciting strongmen. Arm wrestling is gonna blow up after this. This is it, you know? It didn't show up on ESPN, didn't show up anywhere, didn't see it again, I didn't even remember talking about it. And now you're saying you didn't even watch it yet.
I haven't watched it. I believe I'll double check as soon as I get off here. I'm afraid to hit my phone because these live streams are always so twitchy.
Yeah.
But the one time I went to watch it, it was like an hour for that. And I go,
I'll look it up right now.
You know, because now you're trying to, at that point, we're big time wrestling, right? All we're selling is hype and promotion. We're not selling arm wrestling anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So get the ring girls out there and, you know, get some dancing bears or something.
50 minutes long. You're right. It's 50 minutes long. And then
for 2 amateurs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not, I agree. I don't see how that's what's going to sell. But anyway, that's the point is that it's got to be broadcast friendly, and that, again, that's part of how doing it with this team format allows it to be, stylized that way. And we've got a game, so we're doing a small females game, like women's match beforehand, which is a format that I feel like Mac will probably adopt at some point, depending on where it makes sense in their super matches. Like, again, not all super matches this way, but it's a cool way that I think can, again, change a super match format a little bit to make it a little bit faster paced and exciting. But so that there's three women's super matches, and they're going to do basically like a round. So they're going to do the first round of each super match one after another, and then do 4 rounds like that. So there's no strategy. There's no like left arm, right arm. It's just like the girls know they're pulling 1 versus 1 each time.
Okay.
But they're going to get that rest in between, and they're not going to have to be like waiting. Like nobody's waiting. Like, well, these 2 pull, then these 2, then these 2. So it's just constant action.
Yeah.
And we use the point system in the scoreboard. So it'll introduce that. It'll kind of get people familiar with that before the actual game starts. But it's just, again, another way of just making if we want the format to be more approachable, we've got to change things a little bit, because the way that it has been hasn't gotten there yet. You know what I mean? So like I use this analogy all the time as a chef. As a chef, a lot of the times I would go into a place that wasn't doing very well, and they would ask me, make it better. And you'd have somebody stubborn there who's been working there for a long time, and they'd be like, I've been doing it like that for 8 years. And I'd be like, I know, but it's shit. And it's still been shit. The same like haggis. They've been making haggis for 600 years. It's still not very good. I wouldn't want to eat it, like
nobody's ordering it. Yeah.
It's tradition. It's fucking tradition. So let's break the tradition a little bit and try to, push forward. And yeah, that's anyway, that's all we're trying to do with TAWF and Mac. And I think that's something that will help arm wrestling as a whole, not hurt it, but yeah, that is
tough to get the bigger arm wrestlers on board at first.
At first, for sure, but as things, it like Todd and like we said in the very beginning, it's still infant enough that if we had anything like, if we had even a fraction of NFL or NBA kind of money, like everybody in Europe would be, nobody would be, all the best would be on board.
Exactly.
Real quick, just to get to the chat, I got Richard Jenkins saying what's up. JW's what's up? What's up, JW? Uncle Todd, how are you, man? That's Taft Wood. What's up, guys? Very excited about TAWF. All right, if you guys got any questions, throw them in the chat, and I will definitely try to get to them. So,
a whopping 11 viewers right now. This is tough.
High time in No, but yeah, that's speculation and talking about how things might go and how things will go. Like, again, getting back to that idea of the arm wrestling math, like why is arm wrestling math so hard to figure out? Why does it take, like, why are there only a few people that can figure out what's going to be a good match, and then even then it's like it's still hard to predict. Like, you've done some stats now. So how many you said there's a lot, 60%, 3-0s, like shutouts?
I'm saying so far it's running about 60 to 70%. When I remember this, I wasn't tabulating it, but I know when I was in the PAL, it was even higher than that. Now it was a while ago, arm wrestling, but I mean, I bet it was more like 80%, because it always came up when people would ask me to make like predictions, and I go, well, I've looked at all your super matches so far. There's only a few matches that aren't shutouts. So, the score is going to be something 0. That's a safe bet. That's a 7-3 bet that it's going to be a shutout, because there's just so many shutouts. I mean, in your format where you're pulling different people all the time, it wouldn't be that way. But in super matches, it's yeah.
Super matches, yeah, the shutouts, and we've had a lot of there has been a lot of that at Mac, a lot of shutouts as well, because it's kind of with the rules at Mac, and especially in the beginning, it was auto strap, so it was very hard. Like if you needed to play tricks to get a win, it was going to be very hard to, like, you were strapped to your opponent. The setup is very like fair and very straightforward. Yeah. So it was once you were caught with somebody that was too strong for you, it became pretty obvious. So
yeah, and arm wrestling small enough that you can have a few people just super dominate it. Once it's big enough, you'll probably get fewer shutouts because you'll have more people. But it doesn't take much to be a superstar if the sport's real small.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is why it hopefully can keep growing. So
of course, because ideally we want to minimize those shutouts. That's entertaining to watch.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because after there's so many shutouts that the bet. I don't know if you guys are allowing betting during the thing. After the first round, you can probably bet something that's probably your winner. It's very rare that you lose the first round and then still win. That's very, very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the odds would change immediately, and then there would be a huge potential to win big if you then bet for the guy who doesn't have to win yet. So
yeah, you'd have to somebody'd have to have the courage to drop the first match in order to bet on himself.
Well, and remember now in our format with the team thing, you'd have which team wins the left hand lightweight or middleweight right or whatever it is, who wins that class altogether. But then you might say, like, you might be able to bet and say, hey, I bet that Todd doesn't lose a match regardless of, you know what I mean, independent of shutting out that class. Do you know what I'm saying? So you can not only bet on the class, you can bet on the individual arm wrestlers too, and have to figure and anticipate or speculate on that, right? So that's another part of the strategy that's interesting. But yeah, with the shutouts for super matches, that is another part that is because if you know those are the stats, then again, as an audience, once you watch that first round, like what becomes how interesting is it to watch the rest? But then as soon as a match turns around, like as soon as a match is 2-0 and then it goes 2-1, those matches are so exciting, So like the more of those we can get,
And of course, if you're so dominant in your class, you're going to be more inclined to want to move up and try to face the guys that are heavier than you, which leaves you open to being fatigued or damaged. And then when you go pull your the class that you're actually
you're then needed, for your actual class,
yeah.
Okay, Neil's index fingers put a few in a row, so let me just get to them. He said, "What's up?" Then he said, "TAWF's going to be exciting." Then he says, "Team Calgary is going to be number one." And then the list that Sean put together, will be hard to beat. Okay, so he's still talking about Alberta and Calgary. Never been so excited for arm wrestling. Cool. Well, thank you, Neil. I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to seeing.
Have you seen that shot? Oh, you haven't seen the list?
I haven't seen his list yet, no. So I'm too interested to see it. But yeah, Sean Crother is one of the guys in Alberta that we've been talking to. He's like Matt Mask's one of his main training partners, and he'll be one of the guys helping really put together the team in Calgary, which is cool. And Todd being Ohio, where does that relate to Detroit?
I'm about 3 or 4 hours from Detroit.
So, and Ohio's next to Michigan, right? Like
Ohio's right. Ohio and Michigan share a border. So here's Michigan. Ohio's right down
underneath
here.
it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's when. So the teams in the U.S. that we have or that we'll be establishing will be Long Island, Detroit, Tampa Bay, and Las Vegas. And I established that based on like there's a lot of arm wrestlers around those areas because they don't have to be like the guys don't have to be from Detroit. It's the only rule that we've established is like somebody within 150 kilometers of Detroit can't be drafted on to Long Island or Tampa Bay or Las Vegas and whatever. So right now what we've got is like 36 guys in the draft pool that are all from around Quebec and Ontario and a couple guys I think from Nova Scotia as well. And then the two managers will, go back and forth and pick their teams. And there's a number of them that can only be on one team or the other, but then there's a big pool of them that can be on either one. So that's where some of that strategy will come in,
And then, so it's obviously 8 per team. And then how many reserves is each team allowed?
Yeah, so it's 2 starters and 1 reserve in each class. So eight starters and 4 reserves. And then the reserves are if something happens to a starter before the game or once the actual season is going, you'll have to rotate based on fatigue from the previous games and stuff. But
yeah.
But yeah, we
maybe we should talk a bit how the season's going to run. Because most arm wrestlers, they compete every couple of months, every 3 months.
Yeah.
They prepare for one super match and then they, rest and then peak again for another one.
Yeah,
Now
so
we're asking arm wrestlers to compete every couple weeks in a game format, completely different to what they're used to. So
yeah, and it'll also give again, trying to relate it to other sports. One of the things that's interesting with every other sport is there's like an off season and then the actual season. So most of the time it's like you get yourself ready for the season, you get yourself to a certain point to start the season, and then you try to maintain that throughout the season. And then once the season is done, you prepare for the next season kind of thing. So it'll be that there will be definitely a bit of that happening, or that will be sort of the same thing here, where like Alex is saying, once the season starts, each team is going to be playing a game every 2 weeks, and like we said, there's 12 people on the team, but 8 people go to the game. So again, based on fatigue, somebody might not go every 2 weeks. They might get a rest for longer, but again, because it's not a super match, it's single polls, and you might not have more than 4. There's a lot of, it's going to add for a lot of different reasons for strategy and how things are going to play out, and also looking at the games that are coming up, going, oh, I definitely want to make sure that Todd's right is fresh for that game, because that's going to be a really hard game. So let's rest him in this game, kind of thing. So again, similar to pitching and baseball. So that's going to be part of it. I think the really exciting part, and again, for the speculation, is once a season starts to unfold, is not only will all that strategy play out, but that's, again, part of what makes other sports so exciting, is that the storyline starts to unfold as the season unfolds, right?
So a game is team versus team.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then in a game, there's 3 classes: lightweight, middleweight, heavyweight.
4 light, middle, heavy, super.
Okay, so in a game, when, let's say, the super heavyweight goes up against his first opponent, what's that called?
Okay, so if you're looking at the first round of the game, there's 8 matches.
So there's a round. Okay, there's a game, team versus team. Then a round is every weight class.
1 match in each one. So lightweight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a match. So when I walk up to the table as a super heavyweight, the first time, that's a match.
Yep.
Okay. So then what happens when we start and there's a foul? What's the second ready go called in that match? Right? Because the match is now a series of ready goes.
That's all. So that's all 1 match, and then every ready go I would call a pull.
You call a pull.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So you could have, because of the fouls, it's a 3 foul system, you could have 5 pulls, even, like Devin WAL style. You could end up having like maybe 10 pulls some magic way, because he's a magician, in a single match, right?
In a match. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, when I do the stats, I get a lot of comments because they call it a super match. Well, a super match to me would be a series of matches, but the scoreboard calls it rounds. So there's a super match, which consists of rounds. And then each round, you have, like you said, 5 or 6 ready goes. And I didn't know what we were calling. So I was calling those matches because nobody ever really defined them. I wasn't calling them polls, but I go, a super match should be a series of matches, and then a match could be a series of rounds or pulls or whatever. But the way the East versus West did it, was just confusing, because it's the announcers would sometimes get confused. Well, not confused, but they'd say, okay, we're in round 1 and foul, and we're still in round 1, and we're still in round 1. But there's been like 3 attempts.
Well, no, and because of that terminology too, you'll notice when they get by the second or third round in a match, where then what foul, what match, then they even start to get confused on all that too, of like what round they're even in and all that, right?
Yeah.
And the people putting the graphics in get confused a lot of the time.
Oh, the graphics are wrong 20% of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, they're wrong so often. It says the wrong round. They give it the wrong guy on the foul. They changed it. When I watch these matches, I turn the sound off, because I don't really because it's too confusing. The announcers and the scoreboard and stuff are all disagreeing. So I just record what I saw. So if somebody fouled and it didn't get called, I note that as uncalled foul. But I keep the win losses the same. But a lot of them I go, that guy's got 3 fouls and they're still starting. That guy should have lost already. And the refs will miss it all the time. I saw somebody pin somebody and they called it back like a minute later. And there was never any explanation. I go, well, I don't remember them assigning a foul or anything. So, but I was just curious what you call it. So it's a match consists of pulls. Okay.
Yeah, that's how I would define it. And then a round. So a game consists of 4 rounds. Each round consists of 8 matches. Each match consists of as many pulls as needed to finalize the winner of that match.
Because that's a statistic I follow, is how many pulls per match somebody has. And I'm running about 2. Dave Chafee gets about 2. Devin gets like closer to 2.5 or so. I got his stats right here. Rounds. I keep changing them. Yeah. Devin's got 2.5 pulls per matches, but in his first round, he's like 3.6. Which is way more than anybody else. A lot of people are running in the 2.3 range.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
I can.
The scoreboard, do you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to see, I got to see how that looks. Okay, cool. So Todd, if you can see that, that's how the scoreboard works. So you see how you have LL, LR, ML, MR in the middle, like round 1, and then so that's lightweight left, lightweight right, middleweight right. You got what I'm saying? And then in the beginning of the game or the beginning of a round, there's 2 minutes, and that's when the managers will pick who's going to fill each slot. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you don't know who the other team's going to put in the corresponding slot, but you know who their team is, so you're anticipating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the game goes on, and then you can see the fouls or the little dots next to the score, and so on, and then it accumulates the score over the course of the game. And there's 30 seconds between rounds, so like once the timer starts, they have 30 seconds to get to the table and put their elbows down. If they don't make it to the table inside the 30 seconds, then their team gets a 1-point penalty. And then there's a 10-second timer starts over. So like if they, for some reason, don't care about the 1-point penalty because they're in the middle of it talking, or he's getting his arm rubbed down or whatever, they can decide to not get to the table, but they're going to get a penalty for it. And then the timer's going to start over again. And then 2 minutes between rounds. Each round's the same. But the scoreboard makes it a little easier to get the concept, I think, right? So, any questions about it now that you can see it?
Yeah, I see it. No, I don't have any questions.
All right, cool. Now I got to figure out how to take it down.
Neil's index finger asks, if you foul, you lose points, right?
You want to explain that, Alex?
Yeah, sure. So only the winner of any match gets points. So whether the winner fouls or the loser fouls, only the winner is the one receiving points in the end. So baseline win without any fouls is 5 points. If the guy that won gets a foul during that match, he's going to lose 1 point. So he's going to get 4 points for the win. But he's also going to benefit from the other guy fouling. So if the guy that he beat fouls, he's going to get 6 points. He's going to get that additional point on his record. So he's going to get the 6. So he benefits from the other person fouling. If he makes the other person foul out, which would be in our system, since it's a 3 foul system, he's going to get 8 points. So there's a huge benefit in being so dominant that you make your opponent foul out.
So you better sort out that whether you can push them off the pad. Because that's a strategy. Because a top roll is worth 5 points, but pushing them off the pad's worth 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
I mean,
in and of
you're
itself.
going to have to change it from a match is made up of pulls to a match is made up of pushes, because it makes a lot more sense to push somebody off the pad than it does to pin them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely get Ian to make a comment on how the push rule works in Mac, but I know that we follow it the same. I just can't remember exactly how it's worded right now. But
everybody's pressing from now on. It's all pressing and Kings moving. So.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's actually, so we just did Mac did a Challenger series. They did 70 super matches. It was a lot of like, amateur to mid-range like level guys, but the amount of like actual like good grinder matches that we ended up getting, there were some Kings moving and stuff, but because of the extra pad space and because of the way that the setup, because we're not forcing you to get really square, we're allowing you to lay a little, like, to be a little bit of an angle. You're not allowed to carve in, but you don't have to force your off shoulder square. You're allowed to let it lay a little off. And also the way the center of the table is, you're not allowed to push your elbow in, so you have to have a bit of an angle, which allows, without a strap, it allows for you to get a bit more of a bite, even if you're top rolling. So there were a lot of matches that ended up like people in a hook and just good old school arm wrestling because of the way that we were now again, when it's lower, not as competitive of a match, you don't get guys fighting and jockeying for position as much. Right. That's obviously be the harder, the more competitive it gets. But yeah, that's the most important thing is get the matches started, and then once they're started, we want to see them end on pins, right? So.
Jay, Todd, I gotta go, but
Chris, thank you for joining us. I think it was, thank you for joining us. I don't know if we probably won't be on too much longer unless somebody else joins, but yeah.
Nice talking to you, Todd.
Nice to see you again.
Awesome. Yeah, anything else you wanted to touch on, Todd, or?
No, just that foul off the back of the pad. And now that I get points for you fouling, yeah, I mean, there's a definite strategy there then. So it'll be interesting to see if,
strategy is the biggest thing. I really want to just try to, that was the whole point of the concept, is to really expose the strategy and expose that, like, again, the rock, paper, scissor aspect of arm wrestling, because and there's so many different ways that plays out, not just top roll, hook, press, like you said, there's so many different, like even just pushing versus pulling, like, just judging your opponent, knowing where they're going to go, and then being able to dance with them appropriately becomes really interesting. And the more that we can expose that, the more the non-arm wrestler is going to find interest in the sport, and I think that's key to it. So I'm just going to check.
For a game with, I think you had 8 people, how long does that take?
So right now, the way it's played out, it should take between 70 and 90 minutes with the break times, which is like the breaks are scheduled so you can have ad time scheduled into it. So like when the 2 minutes, when they're picking their teams, that's 2-minute ad break. And then the 30 seconds getting to the table and the time putting on the strap, that'll be a lot of like on-screen ad time that's factored into the game already and very structured based on how it is. So it's easy to sell it before the game, right? Which is a big part of it, because with ad time, you don't, like, you need to be able to sell the blocks, and you need to be able to honor them, because the worst thing is selling ad time, not honoring it, and then having to give back ad money after the event. That's like total kick in the ass, right? So
you have 8 times 4, 32
matches.
Matches with multiple pulls. So say 32 matches on average, that's going to be 64, 67 pulls, and you do it all in an hour.
Well, all in an hour and a half.
Okay, all in 90 minutes. Well, that's pretty good.
70 to 90 minutes is the time, like on the stats that I've run out on, like giving, okay, it should be about this much per match, and because not every match, like, there's going to be some matches that are quick and some matches that are wars.
Right. I mean, well, I'm just saying East versus West would run 6 people on a best of 6 in about 90 minutes, because their video, a super match on East versus West is about 30 minutes long. Just two guys going best of 6.
Yeah, so you're saying they did 3 super matches in about 90 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's the idea. And again, I don't think this will replace super matches. I think that the way that I see it and the way that like Mac and I are hoping to work together and everything is that the idea would be like during the season is where the hype is built up. So now you've got, Detroit and everybody around Detroit is behind this puller because he was their number one middleweight. And now they want to see him go against Artem, who was the number one middleweight in Florida, and all of Florida is now behind Artem. And now that super match can happen, and you've actually got like the fandom behind these two stars from their
Right.
cities. Where right now the way it is you really need that fandom to drive people to the event, So, and that was sorry, what were you gonna say?
It's just another avenue for beginners to get in because it's. I get asked all the time, how do people get into East vs. West or King of the Table? And I go, I don't really. I mean, somebody's got to know you, I guess. Win WAF Worlds, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Be famous is another good one. Other than that,
exactly.
I mean, there's no clear
path. There's no clear path of how to get there, right? So that's part of what I want the TAWF and the team arm wrestling to be is a way to really a path for those guys to get there. When I first started really getting after it, I spoke to an entertainment lawyer early on. And the main thing he said, he was like, the thing you've done is that you've taken a sport that revolves around stardom, like boxing and UFC and tennis or whatever, or golf, and you've introduced fandom, like the team sport aspect of it. And that's interesting because like a fandom sport is like, if you look at the NFL, makes $24 billion in revenue a year. The UFC doesn't even clear 2 billion. You know what I mean? Like there's no comparison team versus individual sport when you look at actual revenue that can be generated. And so if team arm wrestling could just be like a minor league football or basketball, it could drive the revenue of the sport, where now the super matches could actually be in that UFC realm. You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, that's a great approach.
Thank you. Anyway, I got no more questions in the chat. It's been more than an hour. I don't want to keep you longer. I really appreciate you coming on and
anytime.
Been chatting with us, and yeah, I'm gonna give you guys, anybody that's watching in the chat, if you got 2 more minutes or 30 more seconds, or just get a question in there now before we say goodbye. All right, but Todd, what do you have coming up? Anything?
Well, I believe I'm arm wrestling in East vs. West in August, but until they announce it, I'm not saying anything.
So you don't know where you're not doing Shaw Classic, or?
I've agreed to it, and my opponent I've heard agreed to it, but
nothing's been announced yet. So
it's not the opponent I was training for.
Yeah.
So until it's announced, I try not to get out ahead of my skis on any of this stuff anymore.
Yeah. How is training going? Are you just, when you don't have an opponent dialed in, do you just stick to just like some basic things, or you just keep going with your same rotation?
Well, like I said, I was training for Arackley, so I'd already pulled him twice. The opponent they gave me, I've pulled before, and I've never beaten. So, but I just did his stats workup, so now I know where the best avenue is. I just don't know if I can jump on that road.
You can get it. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, sweet. Well, I got one more question here. Let me just. It was. That's just might be points. Blah, blah, blah. So what would? So the teams are competing for the game coming up in October. The teams are competing for like a prize, like the winning team gets extra money. All the athletes that make it to that game will be getting paid as if like they had a super match, basically. And their rooms are covered, like they're getting treated like proper athletes. But the winning team will get a win bonus. And then that is how the season would play out too. Is that the athletes would get a salary to show up at every game, and then there would be a win bonus for winning the game. Then there would be bonuses at the end of the year for the winning team. And the way the season works, it's 4 Canadian, 4 US teams. So it'll be at the end of the season, the top 2 Canadian teams will play each other. The top 2 US teams will play each other. the winner of those two games will play each other for the top US versus Canadian team, and then the winning team will win whatever the cup is that we establish for the league, and prize money and so on. And then there's also going to be most valuable puller, MVP. MPP is most points per pull, so the athlete who scores the most points per pull, and then I forget what I called it, hardest to pin or something like that, is the one who gives up the least number of points. Are the three, like, valuable awards that we're going to give out. Anyway, that's what it is. Thank you for asking. I would just ask. Okay, no more questions. All right. Anyway, Todd, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Jason.
Awesome. I will talk to you again soon. You guys, thank you so much. I'm going to end the stream now. We really appreciate you guys being here, and we will be on again in 2 weeks. Not sure with who yet, but stay tuned and you will see. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. We are off. Thank you very much.
Of course, man. Anytime.
Anything else? Did you want to talk about anything that we didn't want to talk on there?